We give our first impressions of the 2020 Ford Escape, talk about the latest update in the California emissions controversy and what it means for consumers, and are car subscription services worth it or not? Next on Talking Cars. Hi, and welcome to Talking Cars. I'm Jennifer Stockberger.
I'm John Lincove.
And I'm Jake Fisher.
So we're going to start off with some developments in some things we talked about and actually gave some history on in episode 218, in particularly California's ability to regulate their own emissions. Two things happening in the news. One, the Department of Justice is doing an antitrust investigation of the four automakers, Ford, VW, Honda, and BMW, who had come to an agreement with California. And the other is this potential revocation of California's ability to regulate their own emissions standards. So, Jake, thoughts on how this is progressing?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I mean, you look at, VW when they were polluting too much. I mean, they had a lot of issues. And now that they're agreeing to pollute less, they're running into issues too. And what's interesting is, you look at California, it's not just randomness that California really became kind of the leading edge in terms of emission standards and all that. Because, it wasn't that long ago that, there was a serious smog issue. Right. You look, you see the old pictures of LA that were just like, you couldn't even see. It was just smog all over the place. And they've done a lot to clean that up. And a lot has to do with, California saying, hey, you know what? If you want to sell a car here, you got to do X and Y and Z.
Right.
And that has helped them. And it has worked. Yeah. It's much cleaner there. But it's, and I think the argument against it is that, look, if you have to build the car for California, then you know what, you're going to wind up having to build that for everyone else, and they almost de facto kind of regulate the rest of the country.
It's such a big market.
It's such a big market, but the truth is that seeing it that way, you're almost just looking at the United States. There are other countries besides us. And they have serious regulations too. So it's actually, we're seeing all these small displacement turbo engines and better fuel efficiency and all stuff. It's not just about California, it's about Europe. Right. It's about, you go to China now, and if you want to go downtown, some places they're regulating, you have to have hybrid or electric. So it is a global market. And because the companies, the big three, they've had to go and do this, it can help them be more competitive overseas too, where maybe there's more money to be made in China or whatnot.
Right. And I think the ideal, to your point, would be harmonization of every car around the whole world.
Around the whole world. Look,
if they could build one version that met everything, that would be great.
Exactly.
But there's a lot more regulations outside of fuel economy and emissions that are different. But,
Right, yeah. That would be the panacea, that just one road and everyone were on the same side of the road, and everyone, had, either shoes miles per gallon or, liters per 100 kilometers or whatever it is.
And even as the potential of saving money for the consumer, if they're not building so many different powertrains to hit each individual regulation, you do have a true global powertrain.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Sure, that's going to save. That has the potential. Can't say guarantee it'll save money, but right there, fuel economy and lower costs for the manufacturer, potentially lower costs for the consumer.
Right, and the ultimate arbiter is going to be the market. Right. And we have done. There's been some survey data, John, that says that people do want better fuel economy. Are, to your point with the VW, they are concerned about emissions, obviously.
Well, so first off, Consumer Reports, our advocacy group. They did a nationally representative survey, and respondents who plan to buy a large SUV or a pickup truck actually say that they're willing to pay more for the vehicle for better fuel economy. And then 73% of people who are driving these want better fuel economy in their current vehicles. So as we shift from more efficient, smaller cars and sedans, which just inherently they weigh less. They're going to be more fuel efficient than an SUV, particularly a large SUV or pickup truck. You're moving towards that world. These buyers say, I love my SUV. I love the room and space that I get, the height, but I want better fuel economy. And of the survey, 88% of Americans overall agreed that automakers should improve fuel economy in all types of vehicles.
Well, and especially the larger ones. I mean, I think there's this assumption that, like, you know, okay, we buy like our big pickup trucks and we like our big V8 engines. And it was interesting when Ford came out with their small displacement V6s, and, you know, I mean, you know, I think we probably talked about it in Talking Cars, that, you know, so many years ago. And we're like, oh, you know, everyone's going to want the V8 and they're not going to want a V6 and an F-150. And boy, were we wrong. Because now you look at the F-150 and they're getting 2.7 liter V6s. I mean, that is really popular and it's a great powertrain and it does get pretty good fuel economy. Well, relatively better fuel economy.
But for the class, it's great. You know, unless, I mean, look, we're going to, a number of diesels are coming out, small diesels, for, you know, for depending on the manufacturer. Yes, they'll get better fuel economy, but gas engine to gas engine, you know, these turbo 6s are bettering the V8s, the normally aspirated, you know, conventional V8s
and you're
than everyone else.
Not compromising. I mean, you look at the new F-150, you know, and look, the fuel economy, right, it's not great, but it's gone from like 15 for a few years ago to 19. And that is significant. That's a huge savings of fuel. And there isn't a penalty. I mean, they're big, they're burly. I mean,
they still have a lot of they do a lot of work.
They do a lot of work
versus
they have a lot of
a Honda Accord. You know, a Honda Accord's just not towing, not carrying that cargo capacity. It's going to get 30 or whatever, but it's harder to make. It's a bigger jump, you know, a bigger percentage jump to go from that 13, 15 up to 19.
It is. And those Honda Accords, you know, again, they're quick. You know, they're getting over 30 miles per gallon, and they're quick too. So they're quiet and all this.
You're not compromising performance. You're not. So certainly, as these things move to a court of law, in that California says they're going to sue the federal government for their right to be able to revoke the waiver, as the Department of Justice investigates for automakers, things will slow down, and the expectation is it'll take years to sort it out. So from the tracks, we have our first impressions of a 2020 Ford Escape. So some pretty major changes, John.
Yeah.
If you want to go through specs.
So first of all, it's built all over the world. Cleveland.
Speaking of world cars,
I think Chihuahua, Mexico. It's built in Spain, and there'll be some versions built in the UK, United Kingdom. So real world vehicle. There will be 4 powertrains. A plug-in hybrid will come in 2020. There'll be a hybrid version, and then the 2 gasoline engines, a 3-cylinder 1.5 liter, and then a 4-cylinder is a 2-liter turbocharged engine.
Which is the one we have.
Which is the one we borrowed from Ford. 180 horsepower for the small engine, 250 horsepower for the big one. They can run on regular gas, but particularly for the 2-liter turbo, premium is recommended, but not required. 8-speed automatic transmission, and for the 2 gas engines, CVT, continuously variables for the hybrids. And interestingly enough, 2 liter is only all-wheel drive. So with that, you know, price premium you're gonna pay, you're only getting all-wheel drive. You know, very interesting vehicle. I think each of us drove it. You know,
your impressions?
I don't think I had it as much time as either of you. What I really found interesting was that dimensionally, it's bigger than the previous generation.
As everything has gotten bigger.
But it feels almost like a hatchback, like slightly raised hatchback. It doesn't feel like an SUV, even a crossover SUV. It feels like a slightly raised hatchback. And I was just shocked that, you know, that it is bigger overall.
We said nimble before, and I think that's still true. Jake, did you get a chance to get in it?
So I did. I'm cracking up with the specs because, I mean, it wasn't long ago that we had 8-cylinder engines with 3-speed automatics, and now we have 3-cylider engines with 8-speed automatics. The world is upside down. But I mean, so we had the 2-liter. So let's first of all kind of like categorize that. So I mean, we did not drive the Escape that we're going to buy. We're going to buy kind of a very mainstream Escape with the 1.5 liter engine. The one we drove, I mean, this is like nearly a $40,000 Escape. You know, I agree with you totally, John. I mean, you know, what's interesting is that this car, so I mean, Ford has said we're getting rid of cars basically, right? I mean, they're getting rid of the Focus and they're getting rid of the Fusion and all that stuff. So this is not just going to take the place of the Escape. This is kind of like their mainstream family vehicle. And it does feel very car-like, which is not a bad thing. No. I mean, it really drives nice. I mean, again, it's the $9,000.
Certainly.
But I mean,
Yeah.
but still, I mean, the handling characteristics, the quietness, the nimbleness of it rides well. I mean, and these are the kinds of things that Ford has always done really well. I mean, the last generation was a great driving car. You know, I mean, really more along the lines of a BMW, SUV than really a.
It's towards the Mazda side of the small cars because they're
yeah.
sporty
That's a good
versus the
analogy.
Corolla side,
Right.
or the whatever the HRV from Honda or something like that.
Right. No, I mean Ford, they do ride and handling well. I mean it really is, but it's a very much kind of like world, kind of European kind of feel to it. I mean it's going to be a little bit more premium priced than say like a CRV or a Forester or something like that.
Right.
But
At least you're getting something for
you are
that.
getting something. You're getting kind of like the new family vehicle.
Well, we talked about, you just said the Mazda side. We've always said the CX-5 felt a little sportier, compared to the others in the group. So maybe this
But I mean,
fits in there.
I think Mazda does the sportiness, but it's like, and Mazda's getting into kind of like the quietness and the luxury,
Yes.
but I think Ford is already there.
Right.
I think Ford has already kind of got that really kind of sophisticated suspension tuning where it's quiet and it rides nice too.
Edge, the previous Escape. I mean, you read our profiles on consumerreports.org. It
talk about
always
the
says,
agility.
it drives really well, and it handles well, and the ride it's a little on the firmer side, but tied down. It's other stuff that you get into.
Right.
I think the question is, and again, this goes back to our conversation about world market. Now, while this vehicle, does make sense as a world car, I mean, if you think of Escape throughout the generations, I mean, when it first came out, it almost looked like a little Explorer, right? I mean, it was very two-box.
Yep.
And now it looks very much, it kind of looks like a hatchback.
Right.
So I wonder if that's going to impact sales. I mean, you'd like the Escape Raptor or something, to really.
Right. Well, it went back almost to those really great first Focuses. The four-door was really curved, and it's like they pulled out the design and said, we can modify that.
Yeah, we liked that.
Yeah.
So two things struck me. One is that, again, the agility. And we had said the agility was great on the old Escape. It was a little lagging in terms of fuel economy. So hopefully these changes, including the 8-speed, will address that somewhat. And on the 8-speed thing, we have had other vehicles where they went to these very multi-speed transmissions where there were hiccups, particularly at rolling stops and slow. I did not sense that in this vehicle we had. It was pretty smooth.
I agree with that, but I think what
will
it is,
have
it's
to
the
see.
combination of those
Right.
speeds and not having quite enough power.
Right.
And I think that power from that 2-liter, that optional high-level engine,
Yeah.
kind of can mask a lot of that
Right.
stuff.
So we'll have to see on the one we
And those are
get.
target numbers.
Right.
So not finalized, and EPA fuel economy numbers haven't been finalized, certified at this point either.
Yep. Nothing betrayed me in terms of controls. Sync 3, big screens, big selections.
If I could interject.
absolutely.
It seems to be that, so the screen is really nice size and properly proportioned for this vehicle.
Yes.
We have the same exact screen size in our Explorer.
Yeah. Seems too small.
It seems small and far away, and
That's just your eyes, John.
yeah, no. My vision's good. I'm not yet there. But and we there was a conversation with the people who brought this vehicle, and they said, look, it's development time, and you're always fighting to keep up. And before they had tiny screens hidden away, and now they're up front, and it's kind of like TalkingCars 100 something. You said it's almost just like they're going to just keep dropping tablets in,
Right.
And as the tablet gets bigger, they'll just drop a new one in. So
Yeah.
it's a well proportioned cabin,
is.
I think.
It is a well-proportioned cabin. And I would be remiss, standard Ford Copilot 360, including Ford collision warning, automatic emergency braking, but also blind spot warning in the package, which we don't see from everybody as well. So I thought that was great too.
And
So,
high beams, auto on and off
auto
high
high
beams,
beams. I
Mrs.
should have
Headlight.
said that.
And also just a props to Ford. I mean, so some of the controls of this very complicated advanced driver assist stuff, sometimes it's very, very difficult to set those adjustments. They do a wonderful job of it. They have these little animations that demonstrate what it is. We first saw it in the Explorer
Yep,
we
yep.
had, but it's there.
Yeah.
It's very, very smart. I think this is somewhere where Ford is kind of leading all
a
the
little
other
bit of
cars.
education in there.
They're leading leading the industry and trying to make this so you can understand what the heck you're actually adjusting.
Technology for good versus turning the radio down with your fingers and, swiping
not good.
virtually.
You're exactly right. We're seeing a lot of these animations, right? You go and you're like, oh, it does this, and there's a car spinning around, and you can change the light pipes in the car and stuff like that. It's like, why not use some of that animations to help you as opposed to just dazzle you?
Sure.
And Ford's doing that.
Yep.
Great. So stay tuned. Obviously, we'll be getting our own 1.5 liter, and we'll see how it pans out. So moving on to viewer questions, we have 4. Count them. 4 video questions, which we love, love, love. Keep all of your questions, video or otherwise, coming, TalkingCars@iCloud.com. So we will jump right in with Amanda from Boston.
Hi, Talking Cars. Big fan of the show. I'm considering a car purchase and wanted to solicit your collective thoughts on car subscription services. I'm specifically interested in Volvo's XC40 through their Care by Volvo subscription service. In your opinion, what are some of the key benefits and drawbacks of such a service versus a traditional lease? Thanks.
Okay, so Amanda's asking about the subscription service, in this case, Care by Volvo versus leasing. So just going through some of the specs I did look into. The minimum for Care by Volvo is $700 a month. And they make it very clear that that's a minimum because insurance costs and rates are still subject to your own driving record. They're still subject to your credit, I'm sure your age, etc. So even at higher insurance premiums and lease costs as a comparison, I still think $700 minimum is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Positive there, and I'm trying to do the back point.
Sure.
No down payment. So a lot of times when you're leasing and getting a 369, there's a down payment there. No down payment required. Mileage limitation, like a lease, a little bit higher, 15,000 miles a year, but still limited. Service and maintenance included. But the truth is, it's a brand new car. You would think that service and maintenance wouldn't be a big deal.
Right.
It's often included on new cars anyway,
correct.
even much cheaper.
It's under
new
warranty,
cars. Yeah.
right, you'd think. And then the appeal, I think, of some of these subscription services as they've been rolled out is the ability to get a new car when you want one. In this case, for Volvo, a vehicle upgrade after 1 year. But just reading the fine print, you're then in for another 2-year contract. If you take that, it's not like you remain within your original 24-month.
I'm pretty sure you
care.
have to get another Volvo too. I think that might
Yes, you have to get another Volvo. But if, say Amanda was looking to upgrade, she wanted to start with an XC40 and then move to an
60
XC60 or 90. My opinion is I think I would still stick with the lease if you have the down payment, unless it was just a way to try a Volvo. But you're in for 2 years, so I didn't know. And Jake, I know you had some thoughts about Volvo and
John's got some
or
thoughts
John's got
too.
some thoughts. Yeah.
Early termination lease programs out there where you may have to pay a bit to have someone take over.
Right.
But I have a neighbor who's done it 5 times with BMWs, for example. Loves it. He gets a good
Just
deal.
breaks the lease.
The person,
Essentially.
someone else breaks the lease. He comes in and is like, well, you're going to cover $1,000 of the 10 grand left on this. All right, it's a deal.
So there's some negotiating that
There's
can be done
negotiating you
at
could
the end.
do as well. So it's a great. It's good for both people.
Yep.
The $700 a month, I would even think that at a luxury car, Audi, BMW, I believe Mercedes, they all have these extra service programs you can pay for. So maybe Volvo says it's all included, but is it just the cost of the extra service program rolled through? That's something to check.
Yep.
Again, what your insurance would be per month, depending on all those parameters. The one thing I'm surprised at is the 15,000 miles a year because, they are going to be pulling these vehicles back and then putting them in their pre-owned fleet.
Right.
A vehicle with 30,000 miles may not sell as well as a vehicle with 20,000 miles,
And in a
it's
3-year
interesting.
lease, you can average that out. So you have
Yeah.
an extra year. But if you're going back for a new Volvo after a year and it's 15,000, it's 15,000.
Right,
so
right,
that's
So look, I think the big selling pitch here is like, it's convenient, one-stop shopping or whatever.
one bill.
But you know what? I mean, sometimes
This has its advantages.
having that convenience is costing you. I mean,
Right.
look, you know what? Like, if you're the type of person who goes to the big box store for something, the electronics store for something else, the grocery, you could go to a drugstore and you could probably buy most of your stuff. It's convenient, but it's going to cost money. So sometimes, maybe you're better off like searching around for good, what you could get a deal for like car insurance and whatnot. And the other thing is, again, do you really want to commit to a Volvo? Because, I mean, we have a lot of data on Volvos and the reliability is not that great. Now, I get it. They're going to be under warranty.
Right.
But still, you can't look past the inconvenience of when the car is not working.
Right.
And just because it's all covered doesn't mean you don't have to keep on bringing the car back in or potentially, I mean, even if you're stranded or something like that.
Right.
You're not going to be stranded. They're going to come pick you up or whatever. But I mean, still, it's not the greatest. And if you decide, hey, you know what? I don't want to get the 60, I want to get the 90, whatever. A lot of the new Volvos do have a lot of reliability problems.
Right.
Yep.
So, yeah, so for Amanda, investigate thoroughly and maybe consider a different option than the Volvo XC40. Great, thanks so much. Next question is from Sark.
Hi, Talking Cars. It's so exciting to send a question. And I recently went to driving school, and I was just wondering, if you ran a driving school, what car would you buy for like the fleet for new drivers to drive? Thank you.
So this is kind of a cool question from Sark, in that we are pretty big fans of driving schools, especially when they're teaching skills over and above a typical driver's ed course. Of course, we host the Street Survival School here a couple times a year. So really think there's benefits to that. So John, you own your own driving school. What's in the fleet?
Okay, so small car, Ford Focus, Honda Civic, something low, kind of benign in the sense of not too fast.
Yep.
Yeah,
Goldilocks. We talk about gold.
yeah, and also it's going to teach young drivers how to deal with seeing around visibility challenges.
Yep.
You put them in a big SUV, and then one day they rent a small car, or the car their parents give them is a small car. They're not going to be used to seeing around in parking lots and around traffic lights, right angle intersections. One thing is if my driving school has access to a giant open parking lot without light stanchions, tall lights, I would also include a late 80s, early 90s Caprice Classic with a bench seat, in there. Because much like the driving school handling education at some racetracks that I've been to, the passenger can hit the brake or hit the gas for the driver to teach over and understeer.
Oh, right, yeah.
And it's not for drifting, but it's for...
Why are you looking at Shay?
But it's for learning car control. You skid, particularly you're in the Northeast or even down south where, rain versus snow. You learn to steer correct. And that's very important. Yes, there's electronic stability controls, but not everyone's going to be given or buy a vehicle that has it. There's plenty of much older cars out there that are handed down.
Though we recommend
we recommend it, but the
yes,
reality is
everybody.
it's just not going to happen necessarily. And it's great. It's a great lesson. And I certainly remember going around a skid pad and, keeping control.
A Caprice Classic.
And a Caprice Classic. These old, look, there's a ton of old Connecticut police cars that are going to be available. And the guy in the passenger seat nails the throttle and you're like, Great lesson. Doesn't have to be, it could be at the end of the sessions.
So there's an assumption that to put a car on the track and put it to the limits, you need to get like a BMW or something like that. And I'm going to say right now, no.
Right.
And we know that because we have some tire test cars that are Camrys who see enormous amount of full stops, quarter limits, and these things, they hold up incredibly well. But I'm going to say if I owned that driving school, I would actually do what Street Survival does and not have a fleet of vehicles. Because the most important thing for someone to learn is how to optimize their vehicle. If they come in and they know how to handle a Camry really well and they drive a small SUV, or if they drive some Caprice Classic, it's not going to help you as much. You need to know how to get the most out of your car.
Good point.
And that's what I would do.
Yeah.
Also keeps your costs down.
Yes, it does.
That's true.
You don't have to buy a fleet.
Exactly, right.
Just invite them. So I was kind of on the same boat of the car that I would want for my driving school was not the car I necessarily wanted to put a young driver like Sark in. But I wanted the ability to teach the physics, particularly if you can overrun electronic stability control and teach those driving skills, like you both said. So maybe a later model Camry that's reliable, so I don't have to pay a lot for my fleet, but that I could shut off stability control. Maybe not a Caprice Classic, but at least no stability control. So great question.
I know, they're cheap.
Yeah. So our next question comes from Canada. Take a listen.
Hello, Consumer Reports. I have a new Genesis G70 and I have a question. Every day I have a longer commute. I'm in Canada, so my commute is 60 kilometers. Now, I was wondering, how do they calculate the fuel economy of my car. It is 20 mpg in the city and 30 mpg on the highway. But at what speed do they calculate highway driving? I have one route where I can do 90 kilometers an hour, and I have another route where I could do 110 kilometers an hour. And which one of those routes is my car more fuel efficient? Thank you.
So there's really kind of two questions there. One is about regulation, and one is his specific question about his very own commute. So the regulation, at least for the United States, there's kind of two highway cycles that make up that highway fuel economy number. There's the old one, average speed 48 miles per hour. It didn't go above 60 miles per hour. But in 2008, they added the US 06 driving cycle, and it was meant to be a little more real world. Some accelerations and braking, hard accels, hard brakes, goes up to 80 miles per hour. So those are the two cycles that go into creating the fuel economy, the highway fuel economy number for EPA. But Jake, can you address his more specific question about his commute and speed?
Well, yeah, and it's interesting because, yeah, you're right. I mean, the cycles are very complicated.
Right.
They put some kind of numbers, and there's a correction factor and whatever. So it's not like they just go out and run a certain speed. But because we are a testing organization and we do our own fuel economy tests. I mean, when you look at Consumer Reports, you're not reading about EPA numbers or whatnot, you're reading our numbers. And we go through every car that we test and we splice into the fuel rig, and we have fire extinguishers standing by, and we'll actually measure
with
how many
skilled mechanics, right?
We don't mess around here. But I mean, we measure how many exact cc's of fuel on certain cycles. So when we saw this, I'm like, let's go try it out.
Yeah.
So we happened to have a G70 that we tested, and we actually went on our actual test route and drove it at 110 kilometers per hour and 90 kilometers per hour. And look, I mean, I think we've said it before. It's like you drive slower and you get better fuel economy. Right. But because we have the equipment and we have the car, let's go find out exactly what it was.
And these were kind of close together. 90 kilometers per hour, 56 miles per hour, 110, 68. So they weren't that far apart.
So at 68 miles per hour, we got 35.1 miles per gallon out of the G70 that we have. And we have it's an all-wheel drive 2-liter, so 35.1. And then when we went to the lower speed, the 56 miles per hour, which is the 90, it went to 40.7. So you got about another 5 miles per gallon at lower speed. You have the option. Is it worth the extra money to save
and the extra time, right? Getting to work a little slower, but
Well, it's kind of like what we found over the years. Right. You know, for every 5 miles an hour, you're losing X percentage of fuel economy. Right. You know, you're fighting aerodynamic drag at that point.
Right, exactly. And it's just physics, right? There's no overcoming that. I mean, it is interesting. I mean, I don't mind, actually, I'll have to make it up to the guys who are like, we got more testing to do. But the truth is that, with modern cars, with these 8-speed automatics and these high gearing and the small displacement turbos, it's like, let's go make sure that still is true, and it still is true.
Right.
The faster you're going, the more fuel you're using.
Right. One more data point. Slowing down is better for your pocketbook. But
Yep.
yeah, cool. Great question. And we were lucky to still have the G70. I love it. So last question is from Chris in Mechanicsville, New York.
Hi, Talking Cars. I'm a huge fan and had a question today about our 2013 Honda Pilot. So what happens is you're driving along, usually above 45 miles an hour, and the car hits a bump and it feels like it loses control for a minute. It's maybe a lateral shift, but it also happens when you're going straight. A better way to describe it might be that there's a vibration in one area and then it sort of shakes to another area and then it shakes itself out. I have pretty good tires on it. They're fairly new, tons of tread, and I was wondering if there's anything you would recommend looking at.
So pretty specific question from Chris about his 2013 Pilot. John, do you have anything for us?
So I hunted down John Ibbotson, our chief mechanic,
Literally.
when he wasn't rigging the
G70
G70 or reporting. I mean, look, we're not going to be able to. His first qualifiers, we're not going to be able to diagnose a vehicle from afar without seeing it. But some of the things to look at the shock absorbers first. Is the vehicle bouncing and the wheel actually leaving the ground? If the shocks are bad.
Chris says it's happening with a bump. Yeah.
Right, or the tower where it mounts the vehicle. There's an issue. Though the ABS may activate when that happens, so you may feel braking. So maybe that is an aspect of it. But a quick look online, a lot of complaints for that era Honda Pilot. It's called the there are loose rear compliance bushings in the suspension. A lot of people have similar issues. That would be something to talk about. But the best case is to go take it to a qualified mechanic.
Right.
Whether taking it to the Honda dealer, taking it to an independent mechanic that you use. But it's more than just tires. He talks about the tires being new and having good tread. There's more to it to the front end.
Okay. It's kind of interesting your point about, the forums. There's probably a forum for every vehicle there is, and how, it may not be the diagnosis, but it certainly gives you an area to look at when you go online and look what others.
Thing of mass production and interchangeable parts.
Right. Yep.
Chances are, whatever problem you have, there's others who have it too.
Yes.
And find out, what they did.
Yeah, it's great.
And what they had.
Great resource. So anyway, that will do it for this episode. As always, keep the questions, the videos coming. TalkingCars@iCloud.com. Any information on the topics we talk about, see the show notes. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you next time.